Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Tracy Bennett. In studio with me are certified financial planners Tony Payne and Stephen Lucan. How you doing, guys?
Doing well.
Good to see you. Today we're talking about supporting aging parents without derailing your plan. This is something that a lot of us are dealing with or have dealt with. I think we're going to have some really good information for you to take with you today. Boy, I'll tell you, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. I walked this path a couple of times myself. I know that, you can empathize. Nobody prepares you for this. You think, you watch it happen as you're aging, as you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is. You see other people do it. You watch your parents taking care of grandparents. You might have exposure to it. You're never prepared for it because when it hits, it is a gut punch. Mm-hmm. When a parent all of a sudden needs you, and there's no bigger privilege and honor in my mind than, this is my opinion, than being able to have another adult trust you enough and lean into you enough to take care of the decisions for them. What do I get to eat? Who gets to be around me? Where does my money go? All those decisions. But it's very, very emotional. It's very difficult. Hopefully, we can uncover some really good tips for people. I think what I'd like to start with is, how do you even start the conversation about helping your aging parents? I mean, what, in your experience, what's the springboard for this topic?
I'll go.
Right. First.
Yeah.
Right.
It's challenging because you're dealing, as you said, it's emotional, and financial probably is, if you have the resources, is the easiest of the components, right? If you can just write a check, it solves a lot of problems, but a lot of people and most people don't have those resources. So it's emotion, it's time, which weighs on your emotions. So it is a very challenging from a non-financial perspective versus a financial perspective. The financial perspective, like I said, is easy. You can either write the check or you can't write the check. You can buy support. You can buy professionals who can help the situation. But when you don't have it, that's where it can get tricky because you may not be able to work and earn your income to the same levels you once did. So those are the things I worry about when you're bringing up this topic. So
you have a person in front of you whose spouse is experiencing diminished capacity. Mm-hmm. You see it. You know these people well. Maybe they've been clients for 20 years. I know you go through this. How do you approach that?
Well, I think not so much that scenario. I think to keep it more broader from the beginning here, the idea of what's the springboard for the discussion, it's retirement planning. Yeah. Just most people focus on the first 10 years, the fun 10 years. I did all this work. I saved my money. I'm going to go golf. Okay, that's great. That's awesome. What then for the next 10 years after that? And that's, like you said, that's the harder part. The check's there, fine, I can live. It's easy to maybe write off 75 or 85 and beyond, maybe. But then the other side of who's taking care of me? Where am I living? Are we still moved in this place we've moved? I mean, that's the other piece of, okay, great, your retirement's at 65, you're on target, you can retire, have money to go golf. Well, what happens when you get a little older and that yard is a little bit big to mow and now you got to pay somebody, or these other things that come up, or, hey, we moved to Florida, the grandkids are in Ohio or Michigan or something. How do we transport? Do we go back to see them, or are they coming down to help us? These are all, I think, just part of retirement, but it's the non-fun part.
And they have to be vulnerable and say, okay, I need help, right? Some parents don't want help. And that's part of the challenge too, is no, I don't want your help. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. I love you, but no, we're good. And meanwhile, you're on the other side of the fence, like, this is not looking good.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the hard part, is that conversation and accepting vulnerability and being like, okay, we need help. Let's go through this process.
You kind of have to keep dipping your toe in the water with every interaction that you see until you can convince them that it's time.
And it can change
help.
Week to week, right? It does not a yearly thing. It can go pretty rapid in later years.
Yeah. So I want to talk about how you identify the gaps before a crisis occurs. If you're the offspring, we'll just talk about parents. Yeah. If you're the offspring and you're seeing this on the horizon, what's the first thing you should be thinking about?
The discussion, I would say. And that's why, again, our process and approach is we talk to people when they're in their 40s and 50s about these later years, hopefully it plants a seed for
Right.
consideration, right? And say, okay, we have to think about where we're going to live and so forth. But I do believe it is that family discussion and saying, okay, what's the plan?
Right.
Let's set a plan so we can focus on the plan.
There's almost two not approaches, but one, you're stuck. You're living it. You didn't have the chance to have the discussion. You're just catching this now. Wouldn't
That's
this
a
have
great
been great
point.
5 years ago?
Yeah.
So then the other side is, we'll address that too. You come into it, it's thrust upon you maybe, and in the world where, you know what, it's part of our plan. Again, it's not one isolated thing that we work to solve. No, it's your financial plan. You have a personal life, your plan, maybe children, elders, yourself, your spouse. You want to make all these things work. Well, aging's part of that. And eventually, when you age and say, are we going to be in this home? Are we going to be closer to family? Are we going to need to be in a facility? Because one of us may have a rapid decline in health, the other doesn't. Are we going to sacrifice and say, well, let's just go into one place because one person needs it? Maybe that's the right approach.
Yeah.
But the earlier you talk about that with family, and usually, hopefully, it's yourselves, you and your partner, if you have one talking, and if you're that child who you're starting to help mom and dad more, you're working, life is busy, well, part of your financial plan, or at least in our opinion, or our approach, is incorporating what dependents are out there or possible dependents. So that's usually your first mindset is, who might be dependent on me? And maybe it's not financially, maybe they're well off enough, but who's going to make appointments? Who's going to pick up scripts? Oh, we can pay for all of that. Well, then who's going to make decisions? They're still going to come back to you usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because it could be a sister. It could be an older sister. It could be an older brother. It could be a cousin. Doesn't necessarily have to be parents. And you're right. It in my experience, I feel like most of the time, you're in such denial that other people see it before you do, that your loved one is in need. And then it's a light switch, and you have to literally just juke and start setting things up.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we would all be prepared for that in the conversation. But unfortunately, a lot of times it's the last minute.
And the society and technology is not kind for the aging process. Absolutely, that's one thing I've noticed is it is not kind, and you get left in the dust with just the advances in technology. Right? You still people who still, whether it's computer work and how do you pay your bills, check writing is almost obsolete.
Yeah.
And a lot of the older people today, they still love their checkbooks.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one thing I've learned for myself is I'm going to have to stay on top of things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You've got to adapt with society. It'll make it easier on you in your later years. But that's the one challenge I've seen is technology and just society just is moving at light speed, and you're stuck in whatever decade you were most comfortable in.
My kids make fun of I have this spreadsheet with my password. Why are you laughing
And when
already?
you say spreadsheet, it's not Excel.
I said my kids are making fun of me. He knows what I'm going to say. I have this. I'm scary with spreadsheets. Once I learned how to use them. Now it's and they're
It's your comfort
colorful.
zone. Yeah.
And this password spreadsheet is a nightmare. And especially my youngest son is always making comments about my password spreadsheet. But hey, I'm
that's
I'm
right,
on board,
right,
and
but
I'm there.
one day that's
trying to make it easier for
one
them.
day it's going to unravel. It stinks. It's going to happen, but when is the $1 million question, right?
Right.
And then the other one is the living situation is the house. Let's call it the house, right? So the house you're living in. I like having these conversations when someone's in their 50s and 60s, those decades where you're still pre-retirement. Is this your forever home? What do the hallways look like? The door frames? Can a wheelchair maneuver or a walker? There's a lot of that landscaping and cost of ownership and how much maintenance is required. The house is really a significant feature through the aging process.
That's
Good
so
and bad.
hard. That's so hard. We've had those conversations.
Yeah.
And we're in a 2-story.
Yeah. Right.
And they're already pushing us to get out of the 2-story.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you? I'm 60.
But you want to do it.
I feel like I'm 25.
You want to wait as long as you can, but you don't want to be late.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the problem because you love your house. I love this place.
Right.
I don't want to give it up. What if I give it up 10 years too early?
Pure
I'd
emotion.
miss 10 years of joy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other side of 10 years too late, the idea of you're comfortable. The idea of how many steps are there, the neighborhood grocery, your driveway, what things need fixed or don't. Well, if you've waited too long and now you've got to move, maybe you got priced out of an area.
Yeah, new zip code.
We see it where people went to Florida, they've retired now with health insurance, other premiums and other insurance premiums, just all these costs going up. And if you're on a fixed income, well, you can't keep up sometimes. Now you've got to make a sudden adjustment. So that's the other part of planning ahead and knowing, well, if I'm going to go to the umpteenth level, I don't have any margin for error. So when I'm planning this and thinking about it, I should leave a little margin for error.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got house. What's next? Professionals?
Cars, transportation. How long can you drive? At one point, are you no longer capable of driving? Who's going to drive you around? How do you get your groceries, right? Again, you and I, we go to the grocery stores. Kids today, order it online, have it delivered. I'm not comfortable with that, right? I know you're not either, right? I want to see what I'm buying, right?
Yeah, there's something about somebody touching, how do I know they didn't open that bag and take a bite out of my sandwich, right? I mean,
I don't have time for the grocery store to worry about that.
Right? So transportation is important, and then your daily activities, right? Our social interaction. I couldn't imagine living by myself and not being able to socialize with other people.
And you said one in there, and I'd be remiss here if we're on our podcast for our business talking about financial planning. You said advisors in there. And there's a statistic out there that roughly 90% of people who inherit money are going to fire mom and dad's advisors.
ooh.
You could be scared of that, or you can run into that. In an industry of ours, we love to run into that. So the idea of there's so many people in our world, professionals, certified financial planners that are also aging. I mean, as our profession, we're going to be about 100,000 professionals short. Hopefully AI helps with that. Rare industry to say that. But right now, the numbers, if there's a field to go into, financial planning, advising, that's one. So the idea of if you have that, I'll say older advisor, but your long-term relationship, your peer, if that's someone
files your tax returns every year for 40 years, and all of a sudden they retire, or she retires.
If they don't have that succession plan as well, which we have built in here too, and that was very deliberate. I mean, they'll call it second generation. Our founders started it. Stephen and I were the first. We've had other partners come in, be the third generation. We're working on a fourth now even. So the idea of that succession planning within advisors, mom and dad's advisor, they can't email me this statement. They can't do that. They don't use a portal. I still got to fill out this organizer with paper. That's also part of, if your advisor and their crew is adapting and they're staying current, maybe you don't need to fire them or replace things. Or on the other side, it's been great for mom and dad. They've trusted this person. I'm not going to rock the boat. This is who they work with. I need to learn their tempo. And then on the other side, maybe you do something after that.
Yeah. That's a really good point, right? I always look at it as the tax returns. And again, and once you're after your retirement years, you might get to the point where you can use software technology. Okay, are both spouses doing the tax returns, or is one spouse? What happens if that spouse dies first? Right. That's the other scary challenge is going through the aging process is the surviving spouse. How do they manage their life after the fact? Mm-hmm. But I always look at tax returns because some people get comfortable. Somebody's doing the tax returns every year, and then all of a sudden they go, I need a new accountant, or how do I file my tax returns? And there's new software. It's scary.
Okay, I want to jump back into if you're a sandwich generation and you're caring for parents, or you see the red flags and you have to sort of step in. We've talked about helping parents establish a better living space, succession planning. Getting your advisors lined up, your attorney, your CPA, your CFP. What's next? I mean, I've got some things on my list that are on the radar. One is insurance. How involved do you as an offspring get with the insurance part of
the bills, right? See, ideally, in our perfect world, is the next generation joins the financial planning meetings. Mm-hmm. They become a part of the financial plan. How do you pay the bills? What bills are to be paid? How are they being paid? Are you writing check? No, we can do online bill pay, right? I'm a Gen X. I know online bill pay. I don't write checks, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where the cash flow management. You need a business manager at some point, right?
Exactly. And if the first pass, if your parents are willing, and let's say it's aging parents and they've asked for help or they're willing, or like you say, you just see they may need it and you're going to lean in a little to help them out. Well, then the other side of, are they willing to accept it? Something you mentioned earlier, Stephen. And then the other piece of, well, as this continues, maybe they're going to slowly decline. What's next? So that what's next, having that discussion earlier of who would do the taxes, exactly to your point. Or, hey, I know your tax person's getting along in the tooth there. Do they have a plan for what's next, mom or dad? Or, hey, that person you always call for money, is there somebody after them if they, they've been around for 30 years too? That's, I think, part of that prompt is have the discussion, ask the questions. Maybe it comes with a little joke here or fun of, they are a little antiquated in this. And there's nothing wrong with that sometimes, especially if someone's comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned. I helped caretake for my grandma and grandfather before he passed. And they were in that traditional world where she was the caretaker. She's 80-some years old. She's doing everything. Mm-hmm. She's earned her retirement too. So the idea of let's make sure that we structure this, even though it's the way you've done it, maybe that person who's doing everything, they need a break too. And that's the other part of being able to step in responsibly and say, let's make this a little easier for everyone. Isn't that what you'd want, mom or dad? And usually they'll agree.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. A discussion I was having once is they didn't want to spend the money for health care, for long-term care, because they wanted it. I'd rather have the kids get it. So the wife who was caring for the husband who was sick, I said to her, what if you get sick? You're stressed to the max. What if you have a stroke or a heart attack because you're stressed? Now who's going to take care of both of you? You're going to ask your kids to move across the country to take care of you? And she's like, I never thought of it that way. So you got to make sure everyone's healthy and taking care of themselves too.
Can you buy long-term care insurance for your parent?
Yes, but it's probably extremely expensive.
Very expensive?
Yeah.
They need to be willing to help through the process of getting the applications done, qualifying. So in the sense, could you buy it? If they qualify and you can go through all the hoops, yes. But the other side, what Stephen was saying, it might be too late depending upon their age.
Yeah.
But something you mentioned there, Stephen, the idea of being a caretaker really can take a toll on your health. You're prioritizing someone else's schedule, meds, maybe neglecting your own appointments. We see it. There's stats on it where your health is significantly affected. So that idea of even bill pay. I got one more stressor I need to handle, mom and dad. No, you don't. There are people out there, care coordinators, that are other professionals that are licensed, that have background checks, that's their defined role. It's not ours as financial planners. We can't overstep to pay your bills, that kind of thing, but to have that service or to have that separate so that you have that independent person that, did mom and dad make it to their appointment? Did they pick up the prescription? Did they pay for that and use their best card for it? That's stuff you might take for granted, but if I'll say mom was the one taking care of that, now mom's the one slowly aging and showing it before dad, and he's never even been involved in that stuff. That's where having somebody step in that, you might, and you mentioned sandwich, that's having kids too, or having other people on the other side. So if you're able to get that help in and are professional, well, now you got a little better balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, if you're taking care of your parents, how do you maintain your own trajectory for retirement? Are there resources that people can, I know of one off the top of my head. If you have a veteran, if your parent is a veteran, they may be entitled to veteran benefits.
Right.
And you might actually be entitled to caregiving benefits as well. I found that out after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything else that could offer people support in this way that you can think of?
That's hard.
Without putting your own retirement at risk. The obvious things, maintaining your contributions and your cash flow and knowing what you're spending. I know
Your
the
financial
answers
plan.
to all those things, but is there anything else on the radar?
Maybe it's not this part of the radar, but it's there. We hear a lot about Medicare, Medicaid planning. And there are a lot of parents, well-meaning parents out there who all of a sudden want to protect the kid's inheritance. You're 65 and you maybe have $150,000. I hate to say that's not the kid's inheritance. That's your retirement money.
Yeah, that's your long-term care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the idea that you get this flyer from some estate group or attorneys and they'll pay for your steak dinner while you go out and listen to them protect your money, it's not protected in the sense that if you needed it, now you can't access it.
Yeah.
And if you're relying on benefits from the government, Well, then remember that you're relying on government benefits. So the kind of place, the kind of room, the kind of care, that's what you're getting. So the sacrifice of let me protect all of this for later. Well, if the kids are like most, they're going to take that money right around and say, hey, we're not going to let mom or dad stay there. We're going to pay for a better bed or facility or a better place for you to stay. So sometimes that best intention planning backfires. So I would just ask, when you're going through that, or if you've heard mom or dad mention Medicare or Medicaid protections, make sure they really have enough to worry about it. They might be tying their own hands and lining an attorney's pockets in some ways, and it really doesn't help them.
Yeah. And a lot of it's funny because if you talk to the two generations, the parents and the children will do anything for the parents will do anything for the children, but they won't say that to each other. Right? A third party will hear it from both sides. I want my kids to have the best, and you hear it from the kids when I'll do anything for my parents, but they'll never say it directly to each other or agree to accept it. The kids say, I'll pay for it. Don't worry about it. Parents like, I don't want, no, you're not paying for it. Right. It's amazing.
Yeah. We've had that conversation.
The emotion, sure. Right. That's life.
Yeah. That's a pride thing. That's tough.
Yeah. Right.
That is a tough thing.
That's why you have to, going through the aging process, accept some things, and being on the other side that you might have to accept some of the stuff too.
Yeah. And I know we did another show on generational wealth. So if you're in that boat, these topics really tie together. How do I protect and pass on the next wave?
Okay. Scrolling down here, taxation, and we're not CPAs, but is there anything related to day-to-day care that should be of concern to a child when they're taken care of from a taxation?
Well, your parent could become your dependent if the financial situation, if they live with you, they may be a financial dependent, which would impact your tax returns and so forth. So yeah, your CPA needs to be aware of, your accountant needs to be aware of those situations.
And also, it may not be deductible or something that you see right away, but being able to track healthcare expenses, knowing at what point might they exceed a threshold or become deductible, you don't know if you're not tracking it. And especially if mom or dad have great benefits, things like that, it may never have been a worry before for them to bring up or talk about. But as you age and needs change, well, then having the idea of, could we prepay a year's worth of service? If we just did that, maybe some of it becomes deductible, or we spread it out and pay it January 1st. Maybe we're a little late, but hey, it shows that we stuck all this in the same year. That's the kind of planning, too, that could come along with taxes and am I doing the best thing, and let alone distributions. When you think about how do mom and dad pay for things, they might have set something up years ago that worked for them. Great retirement plan. Well, since Steve and I started in this, there's been about 3 major tax bills and changes that would impact how mom and dad might take money out or the best way to do that. So that's the other piece. Mom and dad may have this regular stream of money coming. Is it coming from the best spot? Are there things that they should sell, maybe pay a tax because they're in a real low income tax scenario, or money they should take out that, you're not taking enough out, mom and dad. You're going to have these big required minimum distributions later. That's not really on you to say, but that's something to be aware of. And especially as they're older on and the tax bill gets bigger and bigger from that, you'll want to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
The last point that I have is, and maybe this is not really a fair question to ask you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do you avoid creating dependency or entitlement?
Well, I think that goes on in the earlier
familiar,
years.
Right?
Yeah, it is familiar. And it comes down to the years of raising the kids and what kind of perspective they have on money and so forth. It's terrible because, again, here's the other side of it too, is if there are siblings, the children, there's brothers and sisters, everyone has a different perspective. And that's where it can get dicey. That's where the communication is critical.
Right. And thinking even of it the other way, the entitlement side on the parents. Hey, you're here, you're in town. Why aren't you here taking care of me?
Point.
I mean, that guilt trip can go so far.
Yeah.
You've got your sibling who's out on the coast living life up, having all the fun in the world, and you're down the street from mom and dad. Does that get accounted for in the estate plan? Again, talk equalization of the estate. So-and-so was her live-in caretaker for how many years? You were off living the dream. Well, no wonder mom and dad left their estate a little different. But if you don't have that discussion about fairness, transparency, oh no, why'd they leave me out of this? Well, there's a reason why they left you out of it, or there may be.
Yeah.
So again, just that full transparency of entitlement can also be on the parent side. I took care of you all this long. You take care. No, that's not all the way it was. Really important to accept that.
Yeah. That's a great stopping point. That's great points to make. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Good
it.
topic.
We hope you enjoyed this topic. If you'd like more content, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
Boxland Media. Think big.